Hello everyone and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Opioid cases have been in the news for a while, especially with the bankruptcy of the largest producer of prescription opioids, Purdue Pharmaceutical. This video and the series of videos that we're going to have over the next couple of weeks will tell you all about that litigation and how we ended up here and how it affects you. This is a series of videos that will help you navigate personal injury law and will help you stay safe and healthy as well. Like this video, subscribe to the channel by clicking on the logo below, and check out my website, www.jeffmarionlaw, for free PDFs on vaccine safety and the myths of COVID-19 vaccines. If you're wondering who I am, I've been fighting for people who've been injured in crashes, in falls, and by unsafe products such as opioids for over 25 years. I also filed the first lawsuit in New York State by a town against the manufacturers and distributors of opioid pain medication. I'm also the co-chair of the American Association for Justice Opioids Litigation Group, a group of plaintiffs' lawyers who are fighting these battles against the manufacturers and distributors of opioid pain medication. So in this video, let's talk about how we got here. Now, opioids, we've known for a century, probably more, that they are addictive. There was no question about that in the science. But they did have some medical use. For the most part, they were used for what's known as palliative care. And what palliative care is the comfort measures that are used sort of for end-of-life, terminal cancer patients, et cetera, to help them with their pain. That was the primary use of opioids until probably the very early 21st century, maybe even before that, probably the end of the 20th century, that use starts to expand. Now, how does that happen? Well, there were two doctors by the names of Porter and Jick, and they did a letter that they sent to the New England Journal of Medicine, who published it, and that letter said, well, when we look at people who are in these palliative care situations, they don't seem to get addicted to opioids during that time. Now, meanwhile, there is a manufacturer of this drug, Purdue Pharmaceutical, and they're a privately owned company by a family known as the Sacklers. Now, the Sacklers weren't necessarily what you would call classic medical doctors or scientists. The Sackler brothers, who founded the company, were actually advertising guys, so they knew how to market a drug. And what they did is they started to market this drug now for breakthrough pain. Originally it was breakthrough cancer pain, and then it was breakthrough pain. And then they started to figure out how to convince insurance companies to pay for the drug as an actual pain reliever. But everybody knows opioids are dangerous, right? Doctors understand this, of course. Well, that's where the marketing part comes in. What they did is they took their drug and they marketed it to doctors. And what they told doctors is, people can't really get addicted to these if you're giving them out on a prescription basis, because you know your patients. You understand your patients, and you're a medical doctor, you're a professional, you understand the signs of addiction, so you'll know when to help your patients back off or wean them off of the drugs. And they didn't do this with just brochures that came in the mail. They had continuing medical education seminars. These would also be in nice resorts, might include a deep-sea fishing junket, something along those lines, where they marketed these aggressively and explained to these doctors that there's no possible way that your patients are going to get addicted, and to give these out as pain medication. Now, of course, this was against all of the science. What they also told these doctors is that this was an 8 to 12 hour pain relief, but the drug was only effective actually for about 6 hours at the most. Now, the doctor might start to see some of this addictive behavior. This patient who comes in, man, I'm really hurting and my pain isn't going away. I need to up my dose of those oxys. I need more OxyContin. Because Purdue was producing the drug, the brand name of it was OxyContin. So let's remember that as the sort of the driver of all of this litigation and this health crisis that we have and this addiction crisis that exploded in this past 10 years. Now remember I talked about the patient goes to the doctor, says, boy, I'm having problems with my pain. Can I get some more of those OxyContin pills that you gave me? Well, that's really that person starting to feel the addiction. It's just the same as going and saying, I need more heroin, I'm hurting, help me out here. Well, the manufacturers and distributors of these pain medications, led by Purdue Pharmaceuticals, said, oh, no, doctor. That's called pseudo-addiction. And what that is your patient is telling you what he or she needs. And you as the doctor, it's your duty to make sure that your patient gets the health care and the medicine that he or she needs to manage their pain and to manage their symptoms. So they're taking basically all of the science and all the behavioral science and standing it all on its head. So they've known about this, and they knew that all of this was happening. There are internal memos at the Purdue Pharmaceutical Company that said, keep them high, keep them alive. This was a multi-billion-dollar industry for this family. So the Sacklers. Now, if you go to any big city, you go to an art museum, you go to any cultural center, you go to the opera, you go to hospitals, larger hospitals, you will see wings and displays sponsored by the Sackler family. So they also, to sort of cover their tracks as it were very big into philanthropy. Now meanwhile, they still are profiting billions upon billions of dollars. The Sacklers are some of the richest people in the world. And most of that money was gotten through the sale of OxyContin. But that's not all that's in the chain. It's not simply the selling of OxyContin, because you can't sort of go to the store and buy it. Your hospital, your doctor doesn't, or your pharmacy doesn't order it directly from Purdue Pharmaceutical. There's other links in the chain here. So what's also happening is that narcotics of any kind, prescription narcotics, are still controlled under federal law and considered controlled substances. So you need authorization from the government in order to sell these or to distribute these. And there's another class of companies called the distributors of these medication. And they're the ones that actually fill the orders from the doctor's offices, from the pharmacies, the grocery stores, for the hospitals. Now, part of the deal is that, yes, you do get one of these licenses from the Drug Enforcement Agency. Another thing we should go through here is that the Drug Enforcement Agency isn't just a bunch of guys in windbreakers and Kevlar taking down doors and making drug busts. The DEA is also a regulatory agency. So part of that regulatory power is making sure that controlled substances, when they're prescribed, are able to be manufactured and distributed to the public and to the patients who need them. Now, some of these companies, and I'm sure you've heard of them, McKesson, Cardinal Health, AmerisourceBergen, these distributors are the ones who actually get the OxyContin or other similar opioids from the manufacturers to the retail outlets or to the hospitals or wherever they're supposed to go. Now, in order to do that, they are also supposed to red flag any suspicious transactions. And we've all heard news stories about pharmacies in small towns in West Virginia, Florida, Tennessee, Pennsylvania, where these pharmacies were ordering millions of pills. There are pharmacies, and you will hear the description, well, it's basically an entire year's worth of prescription for every single resident of this town 5 times over. The distributors saw what was happening and simply filled the orders. They knew that something hinky was going on. They knew that there were pill mills in the pharmacies or doctor's offices that were handing out prescriptions. And it was their job to stop that flow, and they didn't do it. So, meanwhile, there's another aspect that's going on that makes this crisis even worse. In Mexico, the cartels have developed a very cheap black tar heroin. And they also found out a very consumer-friendly way to get this to the American user. What they did is they were able to manufacture it in Mexico, in southern Mexico. People from that area of the country would come up to the United States. They would be given an apartment. They would be given a nondescript car like a bone stock Toyota Camry or something along those lines to drive around. And what they would do is they would have a pager or a cell phone. The user would call the pager or call the cell phone with the address, and just like delivering a pizza, they would bring it to your doorstep. What they would do is they would have the balloons, they'd put them in their mouth, drive the car. The car normally doesn't arouse suspicion from law enforcement. If on the off chance that a police officer stops the car for a traffic violation, the driver simply swallows the balloons and hopefully walks out with the ticket, and that's the end of that, and we carry on. So they created this user-friendly environment, and they actually took customer service to the nth power and had a relatively inexpensive product. Now, these drivers would simply stay for 6 months, earn their money, and come home. So there was a constant turnover and rotation of drivers, and they kept it fresh and kept it new. Now, let's say you had made the decision you didn't want to use heroin anymore. You were going to go into rehab. Well, they even contacted you. They said, we haven't heard from you in a while. What's going on? We've got some really good stuff that's come in you might be interested in. Just like as if it was an email campaign. Just like a telemarketer calls you. That's the level of customer service. So meanwhile, this cheap, easily distributed, and easily marketed heroin is flooding the U.S. market. So once you can't get your prescription, you can turn to very cheap heroin, and we've all seen the disasters that have occurred from there. In the next video, what we'll talk about is the theory behind these cases. We'll also talk about and answer the question, why aren't individuals suing? What happened there? Why did that break down? So we'll talk a little bit about the actual, how the litigation came to be, who's involved, and where a little bit of, and get into where we're at. If you have questions about opioids or other dangerous drugs, or if you or someone you know has been injured in a crash or in a fall or by a dangerous product, please email me at the address below or contact me on my Facebook page. I'll sit down with you for free and take a look at your case and see how we can help you and see how we can keep you healthy and keep you safe. If you want more information about personal injury lawsuits, you can leave your questions in the comments below. Like this video and subscribe to my channel for new videos every Sunday. Thanks, and we'll see you next week.